Good morning, and welcome to the Public and Corporate Services Standing Committee meeting of Tuesday, June 27th. I want to welcome you all and acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. And I'm looking for an adoption of the agenda of today. Moved by Patty, seconded by Sue. All in favor? Carries. I'm also looking for the approval of the minutes of April 25th of the Public and Corporate Services Standing Committee. Moved by Sue, seconded by Jason. All in favor? Motion carries. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none. We'll move into the business of the day and dive straight into it with a council update on resolutions, a quarterly update from Ms. Glenday. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Staff have provided a comprehensive list of all of Council's directed work to staff in motion for all of 2016 and to the end of May 2017, so essentially almost 18 months. We're pleased to demonstrate that there are over 450 directed motions that have been completed, and just about 50 that are currently ongoing, several of which are development, rezonings, or directed work that requires some ongoing work. This obviously demonstrates a huge volume of work that staff are completing on your behalf, and we're quite proud of it. That said, I'll turn it over to any questions based on any of the outstanding action items, or the completed ones too.
Anybody have questions? Okay, I think there's some reading, but I'll go with Ted first.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's amazing how much we try and get done. Holy smokes. I'm just on the soccer wall, and I remember talking about it a year or so ago. Poor old Wooly, who donated that wall 10 years ago. You know, remember he came in last year claiming that it hadn't been done. Anyway, I thought we kind of directed to just do it and not get too carried away. So maybe you can just kind of fill me in on that. I mean, we're into pitch, not help. Anyway.
Yeah, Robin?
Thank you, Chair. It's my understanding that the wall is, if it's not complete, it's well underway. This item is still outstanding because there's a problem with some of the turf,
Okay. Yeah.
not because there's a problem with the wall.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
Mr. Liechty has been involved directly.
Perfect.
Great. Sue?
We have not seen yet that the handy dart referred to as a future extension of transit, includes a handy dart. Is not included in our transit motions, and that was a motion made by council.
Chair, through you,
Yes.
staff are bringing a BC Transit update to Council next week, which will include discussion of the handy
I
dart.
just want to make sure it's included in
It's
our
on
motions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to take a second here to say congratulations to all staff for all this volume of work, which is pretty incredible. I think Robin made a statement a few weeks ago that it was one of the more substantial works that we've seen in past councils. And I wouldn't pat myself on the back or any of us, because I know that a lot of the heavy lifting goes to staff. We kind of wave the magic wand and expect you guys to go out and get it done. So kudos to everybody for pulling that off and running with the ball.
We don't have a magic wand.
I thought it was behind the counter there, your magic wand. Anyone else? No?
I'm wondering if there's anything staff wants to highlight in terms of something that's been particularly challenging or in that regard.
Just give everybody maybe a minute to read this through and see if there is any further questions.
This big table is really hard to read.
Well, I looked at it all online, but if you look at it online, you can't bend corners over. But it does. The nice thing about getting this list is it does make you realize how much we try to do.
Chair, if I may, in terms of any items that are challenging, I went through this quite in detail, and, I think the biggest challenge obviously is timing in those items that require external stakeholder engagement. And outside of going to our GMs, I didn't see anything that was a particular hurdle at this time. BC Transit continues to be a challenge, obviously, in terms of funding from BC Transit. So closing those items off that require stakeholder engagement are the ones that tend to take longer.
There's a few things in here that talk, that are being done under the OCP. I'm looking at one here about modernizing the color schemes and the DP guidelines. There's a few others. I guess, maybe it's more of just a note of caution, I guess, that we don't sort of lump too much stuff in the OCP, that we are not just waiting, because OCP is a 2-year process, and some of these things we want to start instituting sooner rather than later, and that we're still acting on them with the intent of the direction, even though maybe it hasn't been adopted through the OCP. So, for example, the color scheme thing was directed about a year ago. OCP won't be delivered for 4 months, 5 months. In the meantime, we're still working under the same DP guidelines that a year ago we directed change. So I just don't want things to get backlogged or delayed unnecessarily just because we're lumping it into something as major as the OCP. And I know we've been really good with the zoning bylaws and stuff at doing, a number of different omnibus, minibus, long bus scenarios, but I want to make sure some of these things don't get sort of lost unduly lost in a longer process than they need to get.
I have a question regarding the environmentally sensitive mapping project and just where we might be with that. Anyone?
I think we're down to the very short strokes.
That's what I found.
I think right now it is the best of my recollection is that the detailed mapping around watercourses is the only thing that's left to do, and ground truthing some of the other, but it's probably 95, 97% done.
Great. Thank you. So that will be the OCP. Ted?
Jerry, what does down to the short strokes mean?
Final details. I mean, adding the last 2-3% of detailed mapping on watercourses.
Rolling it into the dock.
That information is there.
Yeah.
It's being ground truthed and more accurate.
Thank you.
Well, unless we, Patty.
Yeah, this is really great to go through. One thing I think would help me be able to go through it a little more easily, because it's a lot of information, a lot of pages, and I know it's done chronologically and that's easy to tease out, would be to almost categorize them in sort of, some of these things are, a DP was issued, or some of them are very policy, council directed things, some of them are literally proclamations, and so to categorize them so we can sort of focus in on the ones that were really council direction oriented motions, as opposed to process oriented things, or in a matter of course, things, because it's hard to go through this whole list of, 100 motions plus and get down to the meaty things that council is really directed in terms of policy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know that's a pain in, or maybe it just needs a color coding or something.
So, if I might, Chair, this report is produced from a program, and you have to select what fields. So there's not an opportunity to add in color. There's not, but we can do it by department. We can try and see if we can pick some keywords. but it may not be possible to put colors in there because it is a in-the-can program that produces in-the-can reports. It doesn't like, you can't dump it into Excel.
No, I figured it was some,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean, like,
I do know you can do.
it'd be easier for me to track really, you know, council-driven directives as opposed to who made a proclamation on Green Shirt Day and
Highlight colors in the
Yeah, Chair, we can certainly look at if there's a manual way to help, at least with the active ones. I mean, I don't know that we'd want to do it for the
yeah, no, it's
completed
already
ones,
done.
yeah.
Yeah,
But particularly with the active one,
yeah.
makes it easier.
No, fair enough, yeah.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Glenday. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, which I always like to see. And so we'll move on to the next item, which is the TTP update, Technology Transformation Program, for Mr. Kordel, who is now in the hot seat.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, I'm here to do an update on the TTP. I'll just bring that up. There we go. So the last time I was here was end of February. So I am going to provide a relatively high-level update, and I am going to repeat myself a little bit because it has been a while since I've been here. So I'd like to do a review of our program, just at a high level, talk about the current work streams. That's a bit of a recap from last time. Then go over the current timeline for 2017 and 2018, and discuss a few related initiatives. So the program, the Technology Transformation Program, really it's a multi-year program to replace or upgrade our aging systems with modern integrated solutions that will increase staff efficiency and improve customer service. So to date, we've completed our quick wins. Those were the 2016 projects that included emergency mass notification system, a new fleet system, an upgrade of our fire system. We added bylaw noticing functionality. We vetted engagement tools for the public that we can use during the budget process. And we developed an open data portal. We're now in the middle of our, well, not the middle, the beginning still of our financial management system implementation. It's a massive project. That's what I'll be talking about in more detail today. But that does lead into the development management solution as well and give us a base for that solution. It's tightly connected, tightly integrated with the finance system. We know we need to replace our recreation system. It's at end of life this year, and so we absolutely need to go replace that system, and we'll be going to RFP for that next year. We know we need an asset management solution. Again, that's a system that's going to be closely linked to our finance system. We need work management, again, something that will be linked to finance, timesheets, but also asset management in tracking maintenance and service requests. And then we're hoping to get additional functionality out of these new systems to also get more efficiencies for HR, to find a solution for public complaints, and improve council meeting management as well. So that's kind of the high-level view of the solutions we're looking to implement.
If I may comment, when you say that the rec system is at the end of life, is that because of its, you can no longer get updates for it, or is it because of incompatibility with the other systems?
No, it's actually the vendor that's said it's at end of life at the end of this year. We're talking with them and making sure that we still have support after end of life, and that we're on the latest version. So but it is the vendor that's made that product end of life. It's kind of forcing our hand to.
So I guess I'm a little unclear on where we're at with the infrastructure part of it compared to the IT, the software part of it.
Okay.
The IT infrastructure.
Yeah, so the IT infrastructure, we have a very solid server environment, really state-of-the-art virtual server environments that we made sure were in place before we went down this path. There's still work to be done. We have a managed network that is running on telco infrastructure now. I'll be hopefully coming back in July with an update on that because we have gone to RFP to upgrade that network. And so there's a massive RFP right now being evaluated, or proposals being evaluated to make sure that we have the network capacity to support all this.
Thank you. That's my concern
Yes.
as well. I'm interested in the integration on how well it's going and or your sense of how you feel it's going as far as, you know, I guess the idea of the IT infrastructure is to agglomerate all our little silos and make it a lot easier for things. Do you feel like things are going in a positive direction?
Absolutely. So I think you'll be pleased in July. I don't want to go into too much detail,
Like a big
but
review.
what we're it's very exciting
Excellent.
because we do need to make sure everybody's connected. And right now there's still definitely times where they have issues. We've outgrown our network.
It's a big job. I really appreciate. I think you're on top of it.
We'll let you keep the rabbit in the hat until.
Thank you so much, Conrad.
Thank you. Yeah, we're still going through the selection process, but it's looking very good.
Okay, thanks.
Less than 3 and 4 days.
Yeah, so like next Tuesday.
Turn up the fire.
Thanks, Conrad.
Thanks.
So I'll get into the work streams. This is a bit of a recap. This is for, so there's 3 major work streams for our management solution and one for the development management solution. Core financials, this is the basic stuff, general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, our chart of accounts. The solution there is UBW or Unit 4, sometimes also known as Aggresso. And our implementation team is Agilix, and they're a third-party consultant that's got a ton of experience in this area, and they're really helping us with this project. The second work stream is the payroll piece. Again, it's a Unit 4 UBW and Agilix effort. And so absolutely something that needs to be addressed. There's definitely some risks with our current solution. The third work stream is are the municipal modules, and that is the Tempest solution. That's Tempest Development Group. This is that best of breed system that many BC municipalities are using now. In conjunction with Unit 4, they're a partnered solution. And it takes care of a lot of the front-facing stuff with our cash systems, taxes and utilities, permits, licensing, and it also includes a customer portal. And then there's the development management system, which is an additional module with the Tempest solution. This is where we're starting to see the benefits of going with a bigger solution, bigger integrated solution that can give us that added functionality. And so Prospero is the development management piece there. It is also linked with the customer portal, so the end user will have access to their permit information and so on online. So the timeline, and this is a little bit small, but this is our 2017-2018 timeline, mainly focusing on these projects, on these work streams. At the very top, you see the bar going across. That is our core financials work stream. We're well underway there. We've completed the solution design phase. I don't know if you can see that, the actual phases there. We're actually close to the end of the build phase there, where Agilix has gone back and started building our solution for us based on our requirements. you know, we've started doing training with IT and finance on the administration of the system. We're doing a lot of work on our end as well, working on the data extraction from the old system to get it over to the new system. We're starting to develop test scripts. We're working with Agilix to develop the reports we need. And a ton of work has gone into the new chart of accounts. So it's a much better structure, really designed for flexibility and ease of reporting. You know, there's about 2,000 accounts that we've had to, or that finance has had to work with and reconfigure into the new chart of account structure. Part of that process is also mapping the old accounts to the new accounts. Huge process for finance, but very important, and it'll serve us well as we migrate.
A quick question. As far as archiving goes, like past paper files, do we have a lot of that to do?
I would say that's not one of our biggest challenges, no. Most of the financial data is in the current financial system.
Right.
We will need to keep that system around.
Right. I was just curious about old files that we have that are still in the paper realm that might need to be archived into the system. Is there a lot of that to be done? Or?
Not to the new system, no. We're not going to go back more than a year or so.
Okay.
So we don't want to put everything into the new system. It's really going back a year or year and a half, so we can do reports, you know, comparing last year to this year, that type of thing.
Good.
But we definitely don't want to drag everything.
Yeah, it's a lot of man hours too.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's a fresh start, really. So the next, so one down, it's the payroll work stream. Really that's, well, I should mention also with the core financials, we are about to get into our testing phase, so integrated system testing. That's an iterative process, so we are starting to, there's several phases to it, and in phase 2 and 3, we're actually going to start pulling finance staff in. And that is starting to train them on the new system as well. So it's testing, but actually starting to get into training for staff, which is pretty exciting. And that's starting mid-July.
Good.
Obvious question is like security and replicability, data.
Yes.
I'm sure.
Yes, it's top of mind. So a lot of work has gone into the server architecture. So just making sure we have the right server environments, making sure the right people have access. Not everybody has access. So there's a whole plan behind the scenes to make sure that that security piece is happening. We've now got a service in Alberta for backups, and so daily backups are going to Alberta. It's actually
Canadian, we found a
Canadian, yes, out of the earthquake zone and all that stuff, and it's actually very advanced and cost effective, and they'll even let you spin up a server in their environment. So even if, heaven forbid,
Yeah,
you know, everything's flooded in Squamish, we could actually still run out of that environment.
that's excellent.
So the second work stream is the payroll work stream. We've completed our requirements there as well, and we are in the build phase. We have encountered some delays with this work stream, and that's due to some resourcing issues, both internally and externally. We are taking steps to address that, but there's definitely, you know, one of the things we're doing is hiring more staff in finance to actually backfill and support finance as they're going through this work. But also on the Agilix side, we lost a key resource for about 2 or 3 weeks. And so they're coming back to make up for that. They're giving us a senior resource at no cost for 80 hours. But there's still some delays being encountered there. So what, you know, the go live date for payroll is end of January there, and it's very likely to be moved out a little bit, probably February, maybe even March. The key thing there is that it it can't go past the main go live of April 30th. It has to go live before then, and it will. So it doesn't actually, it won't hold up the rest of the project. It's one piece that may go live a little, it will go live a little later than it's shown there. The whole point of having this staggered, having these work streams, having the work staggered is to take away some of the risk. We can't go live with everything all at once. I talked about that last time too. And so it does give us a little bit of room with the individual go lives. There's a dead set one that can't be moved at April 30th. That's when the entire system does need to be up and running. But that's also when we're able to turn off Mace. So that's a major deadline for us, major date for us for sure.
That'll be holding your breath for a second when you make that big switch one off and switch one on.
Yeah, well, and in theory, it's not as dramatic a move because these other pieces will have gone live before then. So it's just another step. Right? It's not as dramatic and risky a change because of that.
Have you run across any of those uh-oh moments so far in the transition?
No.
Would you tell us if you did?
I would. I think the any go live is interesting.
Yeah.
And there's potential for things to go sideways, but I think we've done a lot to plan for that and to mitigate the risk. So I'll get into the third work stream. Those are the municipal modules for finance. So that's the Tempest piece. So major things happening there this summer. We're implementing the Tempest land platform. It's that giant purple thing there. So that's really our core database for all properties. And it's really our customer database as well. And so that's tightly integrated with our GIS system. It is that main database that everything in Tempest links to. And it's also the main database for the development management solution. So we're really starting to build our development management solution there. And so part of that, it gets a little bit confusing with these bars here, but part of that is the, getting the building permits and things. Some of the things that are happening in Mace now, getting those rolled out in this phase. Of course, getting our taxes, utilities, point of sale system, getting all that stuff up and running too for that key April 30th date. And then the final work stream, and it's tightly connected to the Tempest work stream in general, but it is an additional module for Tempest, Prospero, and so we're starting to work with engineering and planning, making sure, Gary Weston is our project sponsor there, and we've got a number of items in development. So we've got a project charter, change management strategy there. As I said, we're starting to build the server infrastructure as well, project plans and schedules, so all those things are happening. And so that piece is really out here. It also includes the online customer portal, and we're looking to go live with that around the middle of August in 2022. And then we'll continue with the other projects at the same time. So we've got very aggressive timeline, but there's recreation, asset management, and the other TTP projects. Continuing to work on those. So some related initiatives. So one of the things we're developing is a benchmarking tool and journal. So this is really a tool that we're starting to populate with data now. So for each system implementation, we're really striving to collect benchmarks, and it's in three main categories. So one is the customer service and community impact. Really looking to optimize customer service, reduce pain. Some example benchmarks there are the number of online services offered, the time required to respond to a service request, and customer portal usage. Then we're also looking at internal process efficiencies, benchmarks that would fit in there. We're looking to improve operational capacity. So, number of processes, number of manual processes that we can eliminate, number of new effective workflows established, and number of meaningful dashboards or data views that we've been able to create. So those are examples of benchmarks there. And corporate stewardship, really looking to improve compliance, transparency, but also drive open data initiatives. So some example benchmarks there would be new standards or protocols, policies that we establish, number of open data sets that are made available, or number of carbon heavy processes eliminated, so reductions in printing or mailing or windshield time driving. Those are the types of benchmarks we're looking to group in there. And then we're also, so we started to develop a journal, and it's really, it's difficult to articulate return on investment. So the journal, the idea is to tell a story and not just give a bunch of data and metrics. And so it's really that meaning behind the numbers, something that we can highlight to the community, include in our annual report, and have some project highlights and testimonials and that type of thing. So that's also in the works.
Great idea.
Thank you. And then we're planning for recreation. I talked about that a little bit already, just making sure we have support at end of life this year. And I did talk a little bit about the telco services RFP that hopefully I'll be back in July. I will be back in July. I know your schedule is filling up, but I plan to be back in July with a presentation, and it's very exciting. We've actually done something where a number of our telco contracts we managed to co-term them to all end this year, so we were able to then go to them and ask for all of our telco services. So our network connections, our internet connections, our management services, our phone lines, digital phone lines, our mobile phones and devices. So just all IT services all at once. Give us your best proposal. And so some of the telcos have really stepped up. And so I'm excited about that process. And yes, I will be back in July. So that's really my presentation. I'm happy to answer questions.
Perfect. A little bit off topic, but at the same time not. Just out of curiosity, as far as security goes, have we ever had anybody probe our firewalls out there to try and get into the system at all? There is a security assessment plan. We have a new firewall. So we put in a new firewall system going back about 4 or 5 years now, and it's constantly being updated. We've never had an issue with a penetration. Generally what happens is if there's too many attempts made, that IP gets blocked. So it's relatively basic, but very effective. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, so we've never actually had a breach, as far as I know. I think it's a simple, we have a simple method of blocking traffic, and it's effective. There's, part of this engagement, we will be making changes to our network, and part of that will be to review security and review the firewall, the way things are set up.
Perfect, thanks. And in this day and age when systems are getting hacked worldwide, it's a very important thing, especially with so much sensitive data.
Yeah, I've seen some scary things on programs on TV
Yeah,
recently.
well, that's the thing. I mean, you get some of these young code writers that are writing, incredibly versatile hacks. It's like the challenge, right? You create a new lock, someone tries to create a new key, and that's how it goes.
Yeah.
And so on. So.
I saw something about SCADA attacks recently, and the good thing is we have everything behind our firewall, and everything's password protected. So, and once you get past, 10 login attempts, you get blocked. So it's relatively, I think we're very secure actually, relatively.
Glad to hear it. Hi.
So secure that when I email myself through the SOID board email, it blocks Squamish.ca. That's okay.
Well,
There's
okay.
something going on there.
Okay,
I'll send an email out to board@soib.ca and I'll get a reply back saying that our servers
oh, that's there.
prevented P. Heinzman at Squamish.ca from getting it.
That might be their servers,
Okay,
yeah,
oh, okay, anyway.
which is also not good. But,
Gary knows about it. Not that I need my own emails, but. So this is great. I love how we talk about aggressive timelines and we're still talking about years of work, but it's a ton of work. And I think that last one, maybe go to the last slide. The benchmarking and really, this is the background work that the public doesn't see. But it's going to be massive and ideally we see real discernible outcomes. So I think the story, the journal of highlights, that sort of, but also really getting that, I don't know how we do this, but, and maybe we get a test group in or something from the community to, like I really want to make sure we're aware and we can demonstrate that the public interface is cleaner, the public experience is faster, better. I mean, the whole point of this is to make us more efficient or capable, modernize our whole system. I'd love to be able to figure out how we really make sure that we get that feedback from the public on whether we've been successful in this or not.
yeah, and traditionally we've done a lot of surveys and that type of thing, and that may still be one of the tools we use, but it could also be reaching out through a digital strategy group and other groups directly to the end user and you know, developers and that kind of thing, and get their direct feedback. And that could be one of the testimonials. You know, well, it used to take me this long. I had to come down to City Hall
Those
4
are the types
times,
of things, yeah.
and now I do it online. And, you know, so I think that's where we want to head.
Okay, Sue and then Ted.
Thanks. And I think you have to realize as well that IT is only an interface, and it's an operating system for the district. And if we're understaffed in areas because of our budget, that it's, you know, I understood that we had over 180 applications for building permits of various types, and that, you know, the public aren't going to be pleased if, in the end, we still have to have staff going through those things, and it's never going to be as fast as we grow. That, you know, understanding the differences in how we deal with with staffing issues as opposed to IT issues, I think has to be really clear that it doesn't matter what you put online if you don't have the back end of staff to support it. It's going to be challenging. So I think that in our next budget we have to recognize growth and make sure that we fund accordingly for those interfaces.
Ted.
Thanks, Pete. Kind of to Patty's point a little bit, the website and our Facebook account and stuff like that, I just always like the idea of everybody having a link to the district, and trying to, Patty was talking about marketing and getting the word out a little bit there, but I really like the idea. I mean, you think of all the information that we have on there, I think it's really important to try and make everybody in town have a link to us, whether it's for security or whether it's for a swimming pool or whatever. I mean, I think district.squamish.ca should be on everybody's phone and on everybody's computer. And as that kind of technology keeps going, then I think we could be a bigger player.
And there's more we can do, and we've got a lot of information on the website, but I also understand it's not always easy to find everything, and so we are continuing. I know Kate Mulligan had some thoughts too. We were going to meet this week actually, because there's definitely some things that can be done to improve the economic development.
I use it a lot, but
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in July, Kate's coming back with the digital strategy update for us.
I'm not sure when she's coming back, but I know tentatively there's a meeting planned for September.
Oh, is it?
With the committee.
I think she also said she was going to come back and give us a bit of an update.
Oh, great. Okay.
So,
Yeah, I'm meeting with her this week, so.
Patty?
Yeah, and I think that, we're doing all the sort of background work now, the architectural sort of framework stuff. And my hope is that once we sort of come out the end of this, we can really start building on some real public interface tools that help streamline and coalesce it all into one app or one portal that the community can really have a really easy time of accessing the information they need, the services they need, and all that type of thing. I mean, here's a question, and I suspect you do this, but how many communities are coming up to speed or modernizing their systems to this point? And how much sharing of information goes on between different staffs, different communities that may be, ahead of us or using the same system? Like, is there a lot of communication and smaller communities are still very much not able to or not moving in this direction yet? How much can we help mentor some of those other communities, help them with their systems?
So first part of your question, so we are in communication with the Sea to Sky, and part of the Sea to Sky IT group, so talking with Whistler, talking with West Van, talking with North Van too sometimes, so, and also Sunshine Coast. All of us are on the same platform, which is super helpful. So they've been ahead of us and gone to Unit 4 and Tempest already. And so we're learning from a lot of their lessons, some of them painful. And so it's great to have that, have that kind of communication and be able to talk to them at a technical level too. So there is quite a bit of that going on. We're getting better with that, I would say, communicating with the other municipalities. And I'm also part of several groups like the MISA group, Municipal IT Managers, as well as there's a BC infrastructure group that I'm a part of now, to talk about fiber and that type of thing. So,
so collaboration is strong.
It's getting much better, I would say, and it's been great to be part of some of those conversations now. So it's good. And so what we can do for smaller communities, I mean, we can certainly share our process, how we've gone about getting to this point, what was even developing the roadmap, share the roadmap, like, this is a way that you have to start somewhere, right? So develop a plan and then see if you can make the business case for budget and so on. So I think that's where we can help.
And further to that, related to the budget, there are a number of the vendors out there, for example, like iCompass, they base their pricing based on your population and total budget, so it's scaled and it becomes more affordable because it's to their benefit to get their products consistently used, so they know that affordability is an issue with the smaller, or they allow them to partner. There are a couple of vendors that allow that as well.
Often the limiting factor is capacity versus affordability, but.
Sure.
Thanks. Patty brought up some great points with talking about apps and everything else, but I think, and for the public as well, you have to realize that our infrastructure there and the access to digital information is what we let out to the public, and the interface is also different and more funding needed in order to, the systems, how we access our business permits, how the public interfaces is a part of the system, but if we want to develop an application, that's a separate thing altogether, unless, I'm not sure, Conrad, are we developing some sort of app interface with this?
We are developing a customer portal.
Yeah, but that's separate than an app that you can have on your phone.
Correct.
The technologies are different.
Correct.
And so I think that when you don't know a lot about IT, you tend to blend all those things in. And so you really have to understand that each one of those is a separate thing. And I love the idea of an app, like, I
That's
think
my
we've talked
point,
about.
was that
Yeah.
once we're done this, what do we do next?
Exactly, so if we're gonna develop an app that is an interface, or how the public interfaces is an entirely different conversation, and maybe it's dealt with in a digital strategy as well, and so to have all of that presented would be really interesting, like from a public's perspective of how, what's the next step in technology, because I actually think we're far behind and we're catching up at this point, from coming from our digital, from our, basically our analog system, to a more digital, having a more digitalized system and with better infrastructure that improves safety and improves all the access to communication and make sure that everybody works properly together in the back end. And then that interface in the front end is going to be maybe a different funding mechanism.
Yeah, I think you made a good point. We're very far behind, and we're catching up, and we're getting to a point where we're actually, data is stored in databases, and it's connected, and we have that infrastructure now that we can build on, and so app development is going to be less of a challenge when we have that database and those connections.
And right now, everything we have is forward-facing, is all browser-driven through the website.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it is mobile friendly,
Yeah.
and there's still more that can be done there.
And to that point, I just noticed that Nanaimo did a big facelift on their webpage for the municipality, and then put it up as a beta test, and asked for comments, and had a link on the top of the page that asked people to, you're coming to the site, take a look, scroll through it quickly, have a look at your different groups and how it's laid out, and then click on the link at the top and just give us some feedback quickly and let us know. It was a very simple form to fill out, just to say, what you thought of the new layout. So that may be something to consider the next time we do some updates too.
Yeah, it's always good to have feedback.
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions for Mr. Kordel or in general? All right, thanks, Conrad.
Thank
Seeing
you.
none, we'll move on. Thank you, appreciate it. Mr. Farina, we have a bylaw enforcement complaint policy update. Let's take over the chair. Sam?
Good morning,
Good morning.
Chair, Council.
Bylaw's always way too tan. What's going on?
You? No, we're way too tan.
Oh,
Yes.
we?
Bylaw. Bylaw's too tan.
Or, pardon me, I've got my mind distracted there. So, Jeff Sims, Senior Director of Human Resources and Public Safety, and I'm here with our bylaw enforcement and animal control manager, Mr. Rick Farina, and today to discuss the bylaw enforcement complaint policy. So, turn it over to Rick and we'll go from there.
We're excited about this. The District of Squamish has been operating for many years without a bylaw enforcement complaint policy to guide and support staff in the complaint response. The goal of bylaw enforcement in the district is to ensure that public safety and maintain community harmony through fairly and equitable applied enforcement. We hope to accomplish three things with this policy. In terms of staff, we like to provide consistent decision-making. The officers accomplish this by treating similar cases in similar ways. Formally provide staff with discretionary powers to assist in decision-making. Our staff make tough decisions every day, and we need to support them. In terms of the public, it's a formal document that provides clarity on how bylaw enforcement is applied. In terms of council, we feel it provides clarity and guides council when complaints are received. A document, or actually a report, special report, came out of the Office of the Ombudsperson in March of 2016, and it speaks to best practices for local governments in bylaw enforcement. Their goal was to help local governments when exercising their discretion to enforce bylaws, do so in a manner that is and is seen to be administratively fair. I believe that the district is well positioned and has maintained many of these recommendations as the foundation of bylaw enforcement and its application here in Squamish. This policy, however, formalizes this process. The district has and does promote an enforcement policy that seeks voluntary compliance, which is often achieved through education. This is not always possible. In those cases, direct enforcement might be needed. Essentially, we have two types of complaints, proactive or self-initiated by staff. An example could be safe routes to school. We would do the messaging, the education, and then parking enforcement if necessary. Reactive. Reactive is a response generally to a complaint, either internally or externally. An example of that could be parking, cycling, pedestrian conflict near the Eagle viewing area on Government Road in Brackendale. So in that particular case, we've done some messaging, some education, and then we've done some towing and enforcement if necessary. Since not every call for service can be a top priority, we have established 3 levels of response. Priority 1, which is health and safety. An example could be a traffic hazard, dangerous dog at large, wildlife attractant. We've got a bear into garbage, and there may be conflict with some of our residents. May adversely impact the environment or public safety. There is some urgency. Respond as soon as possible. Could be proactive or reactive. Priority 2, significant impact on adjacent properties. This could be something like a noise complaint, dispute over the height of a fence and that sort of thing. In fact, that very thing came in this morning. Significant impacts adjacent to properties is in a negative way, but does not pose an immediate risk. The response is reactive to a valid complaint. Priority 3, and the final of the priorities, is general nuisance. It could be something like parking more than 72 hours, sleeping in a vehicle, that sort of thing. These violations tend to be cosmetic in nature and do not affect the environment or public safety. Response is reactive to a complaint. I know it's a fairly extensive document, but I want to get all the pieces for you to have a look at. I'm open to any questions that you may have.
If I can, through the chair, just add on a couple things with what Mr. Farina has talked about. We think it's a really great document that really formalizes what has been generally the practice, but I think that Mr. Farina spoke about, it just provides that consistency to our residents, the community, and provides that consistency and clarity to staff. And I think it really also supports council in that when somebody makes a complaint to you, it's like, okay, we have a policy on this is where this falls. But certainly, within the policy, staff look to council for direction on, specific priorities and so forth as well. So I think, it's important in that aspect, and certainly as outlined in the document, the scope is for all of our staff that enforce the regulatory bylaws. Most of the time it's our bylaw enforcement folks and animal control folks who are outside and working, having their tan and kind of thing. So anyhow, I will leave it at that. Just wanted to highlight a couple of
The tan's just one of the perks of the job, right?
Yeah.
I just wanted to touch on one thing, and it's related again, but not. But this time of year, we're subject to a lot of illegal camping and people sleeping in vehicles, et cetera, all over the municipality. I'm just wondering, are we getting a chance to address some of that? Is that all complaint driven, basically, or do we have somebody driving around sort of looking at that?
The majority of it is complaint driven, but if we do see an illegal camper, we don't just keep on driving, we will react to that.
Right.
Absolutely. It's a high priority every summer. I think I've spoken to this before. I think some would agree that at one time it was sort of a seasonal thing, and for the most part now it's a year-round event.
We deal with illegal campers all year now, you know, even during a snow event. So it's something that's on our radar all the time.
But I think the prevalence now, especially with the good weather and the proximity to the rivers and creeks and stuff, is that a lot of people are pitching tents, just, you know, a relationship to beside a water course or whatever, and just hoping for the best that they can stay there for as long as possible. I think it's the associated mess that goes on with that, whether it be human or garbage or whatever that is the biggest issue for a lot of people in the community. Robin?
And if I might add to that, the camping situation is an excellent opportunity where our staff, the provincial natural resource officers, the conservation officers, and several other groups, even including Vancouver Coastal Health, like the homeless outreach worker at Sea to Sky, are able to collaborate and work together because there's so many jurisdictional issues across, you know, some of it's even DFO in the salmon bearing beds.
Yeah.
So it allows our staff to really build a relationship and collaborate on strategies to move people out where they can go, because we have a difficult time on Crown land because people are allowed to camp on Crown land. They're allowed there, but we have some past written confirmation from the NRO saying if the district doesn't like camping within the urban domain, go ahead and enforce, or, you know, they won't do it because that's against their thing, but they will allow us to move people or to suggest that people move along.
Right.
And it builds a relationship. It's better to know each other and who to call BCR too, with one's health.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up, because a lot of people don't understand that, Robin, is that it's not always in our jurisdiction, and sometimes there's nothing we can really do about it, and some people may get frustrated, but there's the crux of the matter, is it's not falling onto district property.
If I could just add one more thing, I had an opportunity to meet with Mr. John Harvey just the end of last week. I went out to the campsite on Centennial just to see what in fact, you know, how far along he was. He's hoping to open July 1st. I hope he can open July 1st. You know, his target group is the climbers and, you know, a lot of the people that we run into that are legally camping. He's hoping to attract that clientele, and I hope he does. He's really enthusiastic. I know he's working really hard to get that campsite open July 1st.
Yeah, I think John Harvey and the word enthusiasm are pretty much linked together. There's not a more enthusiastic guy I know. Great, Patty.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Rick, from your perspective, as the ombudsman, I don't call it report, but this document.
Ombudsperson report?
Ombudsperson report. When you read it, were there some sort of aha moments, or did it, where in that did it help you clarify specifically?
There weren't a ton of aha moments, because I thought that what they were laying out was a protocol that made a lot of sense, and we have already somehow adopted a lot of the recommendations in the report. I think it's an excellent document. I know from colleagues throughout the province, they're working towards that report. So if they're not already there, they're working towards that. And I think for me, it was a matter of, and you know, Jeff and I talked about this at different times, it's a matter of putting what the ombudsperson's report is recommending. We've already, for the most part, have it in our daily practice. Now it's just a matter of putting it in a policy that guides our staff.
And that was my reaction too. I said, this is common sense. We're kind of there already, and so it was more validating than was informative or.
Absolutely, that was my sense as well.
Yeah. Sorry if I can. And one of the things it talks about in the report is you can bring all the bylaws you want, but if you don't have the policy and the ability to act on them, it's hard, or it's really challenging. At the same time, you know, ideally we might have 20 bylaw officers, but we don't have the budget to do that. And we do rely on compliance. All laws in society rely on, you know, 98% of us to be compliant, or else society would go into chaos. But I think there's specific bylaws where there's a lot of infraction, whether it's snow removal or dogs, not picking up after dogs, whatever, parking, that we may want to be very strategic in targeting so that we're conveying a message very clearly and to help have more people comply with the bylaw. So from your perspective, because we can't get out there to everywhere, but are there some key areas you could target or issues we think we could target with ticketing, now that we have the ticketing piece in place as well as the staff to support that? Then we get a lot of comments about why, you know, you complain about people not shoveling their snow, but you have an issue with ticket. So how do we be a little more strategic about making sure that we're communicating through our limited ability to enforce bylaw to make sure we're getting the maximum impact?
Yeah, I agree, and I, you know, our protocol now is that we create the messaging, we create the education, and we give that an opportunity to take hold. You know, and there's usually a time period given for that. If those efforts fail, then often we have to go to direct ticketing to gain compliance. And we're looking at that more and more here in the district, and you know, that's one of the things that we always look for is not only voluntary compliance, but giving the officers the authority to make those discretionary decisions and to take enforcement when they feel that it's needed. We hear from the public every day what their expectations are, and quite often it is direct enforcement. But that's just part of our messaging.
Yeah, and I guess my comment is we shouldn't be afraid to issue the ticket. Like at some point, that might be the best tool to get compliance on a general level.
Agreed.
So, through the chair, if I can just add on to that, and that really ties into what we talk about as our proactive approach. And I know Rick and I have been talking about that, and he's been working with his staff on that. And I think some really good examples are the wildlife attractant bylaw. You've got the traffic bylaw. Rick mentioned the safe routes to school this past September. It's hard to believe the school year is already done, but you know, the having that, well, almost a couple of days, having that messaging out in front of the issue, so that works to help our residents be in compliance. You know, but some of that messaging includes the sign that says parking's 2 hours. That's the education piece, and you know, we as a community maybe ought not to have to do any more education. It's pretty common. You park and you don't plug the meter if you have them, or you're there for 4 hours. That you know, receiving a ticket is certainly an option. And I think with the snow events, you know, this year being what it was, a really great learning opportunity, I think, for all of the areas within the district, and being ahead of that even more than what we were this last year, so that you know, the community understands that we're giving some notice, we're doing some education, and you may want to expect that if you're not complying, you're going to be receiving a ticket if it's appropriate. And that's where, of course, what's written into the policy, the discretion for the officers. So it may be that one person will receive a ticket, and that in the context of the circumstances, it's not appropriate to issue the next person a ticket. And you know, it's hard to imagine exactly what those are, but there will be those circumstances where the officers will exercise that discretion.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay.
Well, I'm going back a little bit. Yeah, it'll be nice when John does have that campsite, because you guys all have a chance to direct everybody. But to just to Patty's comment on John Harvey, there's Jim Harvey too. who's working on a big project as well, so. I was just listening to the news this morning about camping, illegal camping in the city of Vancouver, and all the tent cities that are going up on public property. And the court case is on to stop anybody from taking them down because it's public property and people have the right to shelter and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, you could get a campsite across the street. No? What's different here than in the city?
I think in the city of Vancouver, there's more homeless people than there are locations or beds for those homeless people. In Squamish, that's not the case.
Really?
If we need beds, we have beds, and in the city of Abbotsford versus Shantz in 2015, BC Supreme Court decided that the city of Abbotsford at the time didn't have enough beds. So what the judge decided in that particular case was that in those situations where there are not enough beds, then people are permitted, the homeless are permitted to camp on city parks between 7 p.m. and 9 a.m. They can't set up a camp, they can set up a tent, they can sleep there because they have the right to safety and, and have a roof over the head, this sort of thing. That was the reasoning. Here in the district of Squamish, if we needed to do that, we would move them from the park over to our campground off Loggers Lane. And again, the rules would be the same. It would be 7 p.m. to 9 a.m. And that's entrenched in law by the BC Supreme Court. So that's why we're a little different.
Yeah, I think that what they're going after now is like permanent setups because of safety and the numbers, but if we're different, that's fine. 'Cause 35 years ago when I moved here, I lived in my truck, so I can relate a little bit.
Jeff?
Through the chair, just to add a little bit to that, and that often when we receive a complaint of somebody camping off Mamquam Forest Service Road, it may be that they're actually not a homeless person either. So I think there's two distinctions. Often it's people come for the recreation, etc., and they just want to camp somewhere, versus a homeless person, and certainly our staff, make those distinctions and help people, to whatever the agency in the event that it's a homeless person.
Thank you. Robin is back.
So, and one of the other distinctions in that where we have some, I don't know what the right word is, it's not leverage, but where we have some control, we can direct people towards where there's some facilities. So we don't have to necessarily, if there's people camping in Stan Clark Park, for example, where there's kids, it's a kids' playground, we can direct which piece of property that is near some showers and washrooms and some food that people can go. So it's not that the people who are homeless don't have a right to be in every single public property. We can direct them, and the courts have also recognized that when you get numbers of homeless people together and it becomes a big tent city, there's other situations and they will allow you to try and regulate the size. And before it gets too big, you can direct as well. So there is a little bit of recognition from the early rulings, which ended up in the Victoria situation on the Parliament, to give us some control and redirect. And we do have our facility. That is what is our benefit. Further to that, our solicitor is the solicitor in the Abbotsford Insurance case. So we have somebody who's very in tune with what we can and can't do. And we've had many hour and 2 hour telephone calls with him to get some direction because we don't want people to be disenfranchised.
Thank you. Patty?
I appreciate that we're not in maybe the same situation as some places like Abbotsford and Vancouver, but we could be. And so keeping on top of this, making sure projects like John Hardy's low impact campground, making sure the homeless shelter, or BC Housing, we're being proactive about those things so we don't get in situations where we're disenfranchising people or we're really making a situation way worse than it needs to be. So that's upon us to make sure we're being proactive in addressing it in a compassionate, constructive way. Low pitch.
Great. Any further to add? Anyone? I have a recommendation here that the District of Squamish rescind the anonymous complaints policy 004-02 and that we adopt the bylaw enforcement complaint policy. All moved and seconded. Patty? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Rick. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Moving on to council, status of recommendations to council. Are there any? And I was going to ask Patty, we were going to have coastal health in today at this meeting at some point. I'm just curious if one you might be able to reignite that.
Okay, I'm getting actually pissed off because I just got an email saying that she's canceled again. And so I'm going to have a call with her because when I met with Karen Olsen 4 months ago now, she talked about how See This Guy and Squamish had sort of been put a bit on the back burner while they focused on issues in Sunshine Coast and a few other ones. And that See This Guy and Squamish were going to come back on the priority list because we fall behind on some issues. And I asked her 4 months ago to come to council, maybe we talk. And she's canceled 4 times. So I'm going to make an angry phone call now because it's getting ridiculous. We're obviously not a priority. And she promised me that we were. So I'm going to make an angry phone call.
Thank you. Yeah, because I think that we all can agree that they were going to come and present us with their 5-year facilities plan, and given the nature of the amount of traffic that goes through that facility now and the growth of this community, I think we really need to address and see what they have in order for the community. Because it's got a long-lasting effect, and we need to know what their plan is.
And
They have one.
the email, I literally just read it 10 minutes ago, was that she wouldn't be able to come down until September sometime. And so, yeah, this is literally the 4th time she's canceled
Okay.
on a scheduled meeting. So.
Well, we're looking forward to some update on that. Thank you.
Fly on the wall on that one.
So, are there any referrals from council? Roundtable discussion, debrief on anything? Ted?
So this woman that's not showing up, is it holding up any financing stuff?
Not that I know of, but it's hard to know if we haven't had the master plan, which was adopted almost 2 years ago now, in front of council. It's never been updated on what the master plan for the whole health facility in Squamish is.
It's not affecting our affordable housing enhancement?
No, it's more of the hospital and other coastal health related services, and not necessarily BC Housing. I mean, it brings up an interesting point about, is housing a health issue?
Well, that's
Is
what
it a justice issue? Is it a housing issue? And it's probably all of the above, and it should be connected, but technically, no, it's not.
Thank you. Sue?
In the master plan as well, they had allotted some space for First Nations care. And I don't think that ever happened, so I would like that to be a part of the agenda as well.
Well, that's why
Because
we
we
want
need
the update,
specific.
so we know exactly.
Although it's been separated out now into a different authority, I think that complicates it, but it'd be really interesting to hear the separation out of the authority, because now all the First Nations healthcare is now done in North Vancouver, and all the funding goes to North Vancouver. We have no healthcare transportation, so that really affects our community. So either we get separate funding, or we need a separate meeting with Northern Health, we need to deal with, or I'm not sure how that's split, or if it's a completely separate political issue, or, but those are citizens in our district that are not being cared for.
And yeah, we should be advocates for them. They are citizens too, and we need to work in concert with Squamish Nation to make sure we're effective.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how that happens, if we have a joint meeting on that, or,
Well, that brings up an interesting point, maybe when we have, if Ms. Olson ever shows up in Squamish to present this, that we invite nation councillors to
I
come
think
in.
it's really important
Share
to
in that
include the
conversation.
nation,
Yeah, that's a good
because
idea.
it's, as well, can I just
Yeah,
follow
please
up with
do,
that?
please do.
One of the issues with a lot of the care that we receive in Squamish is that we don't have healthcare transport, we don't even have public transportation. So being designated as a rural community as far as healthcare is concerned is really important, because you get different funding mechanisms depending on if you're designated rural as opposed to designated as connected to Vancouver. We're not connected to Vancouver in any meaningful way. So for low income, it's a low income barrier. So I just want that to be a part of our.
Yeah, we'll
I think it's going to be a greater conversation, and to your point, I think that's a good point to argue, is that I think that we're viewed, and I'm not going to put words in BCH's mouth, but I do think, and it's a complaint that I hear from doctors and stuff that are at the hospital, is that we're viewed as just a quick triage, and everybody should be sent into the city. And so what does that say for our community as far as what the scope of what we can do here, and what the plan is to be able to expand that, because we have 20,000 in this community. We have an additional 20,000 all the way up in past Pemberton that would have to make use of this facility, and we have 22 beds. I mean, it's actually, the word is appalling. That's what it is. I'm going to move on. I think that horse is down and being flogged.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I literally just got the email and I was sitting here stewing.
Thank you.
So,
Great. Well, I'll look for a motion of termination. Moved by Patty, seconded by Ted. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much.